You're listening to For the Republic, a love letter to Star Wars animation.
I am the Senate.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Galactic Senate Sitdowns here on For the Republic, a love letter to Star Wars animation. This is our interview series where we like to take members of the Star Wars fandom and just ask them how they got into Star Wars, what their journeys through fandom are. But this one is going to be a little bit special. This time I'm joined by Conor. How are you today?
Solid.
Yeah, I usually handle these solo, but we are both lucky enough to be a part of Star Wars Editor, SWE. Conor more than I am in terms of the story group stuff, but we recently had a pretty big release in SWEF, Star Wars Editor Fiction. We had the short story Ventress Golden drop, and as we're recording this today on National Ventress Day, it is only fair that we have the author of that short story on here to talk all about Ventress Golden, how she came up with the story, how she created these characters, and just her journey in becoming a Star Wars fan and who she is. So, Catrina Dennis, how are you today?
I'm doing really good. How are you?
You heard about my struggles to find my headphones before we started this, so
yeah,
I've been a bit better mentally. I still don't know where they are, but I'll get through it. I got my third backup pair in right now, so if it gets me through the episode, that's all that matters. So, to start off, Catrina, so you've been, as far as I'm aware, you've been doing like the Los Angeles scene for quite a while now. So, what was your like earliest, I guess, memory out there of like first time you were truly involved in the fandom world? Like,
yeah. Oh man. So I've been in LA for about like 12 years now, I want to say. And I've been really lucky to do a lot of different super cool things with the Star Wars fandom. But I think the first time I was like super immersed in it in real life was I want to say like the season finale of Star Wars Rebels. I was doing press at the time for like a bunch of different outlets like sci-fi.com, Movie Pilot when that was around, and a bunch of other really cool things, and Rebels was coming to a close. And I had podcasts and I was running columns on it. And it was just a really special event for me because I got to go to the Disney Animation Burbank Studios and I got to go to the Snow White Theater and watch the finale with like a bunch of people that I knew in the fandom and a bunch of really great reporters and talent and press, and Donald Faison was there randomly. And I remember the moment that we all realized he was there because it was like a Q&A afterwards that my friend Jonah Marie Macias was leading with Dave and the cast. And out of nowhere, someone shows up with the mic at the back of the theater and goes like, "So what's next for Ahsoka?" And this was like, I want to say like 2014, 2015. This was well before we all had any confirmation that there would be anything involving Rebels again. And it was well before we knew that Resistance was going to happen and that Donald was going to be in it. But the whole audience just kind of like went into an uproar. And that was kind of like, it really stuck with me how excited people were for something that wasn't a Star Wars movie. It was a cartoon that like was made for kids, but that kind of really united the fandom. And I think it's really cool now that Andor is out and all of this new content is coming out that I still see echoes of Rebels in a lot of the stories. So I think that was part of it. But like I've been really lucky to go to like I was very recently at the Andor premiere. I've been involved in like a lot of different events here and covered a bunch of different things for press. So I feel very, very lucky to be involved in the Star Wars fandom in the way that I am because I grew up with this thing. So it's kind of defined my career in so many ways.
I have a couple questions about that, but real quick, I just want to say, so, I mean, how was the Andor premiere? Because we've had someone that was there twice now, and I feel like both times we just have not asked, hey, how was the Andor premiere?
It was wonderful. Like I haven't done an official Star Wars red carpet before, so that because I've always done like the junkets and things like that.
Were
And
you
the press
reporting or were
screenings.
you just invited
I was
to
just
be there?
invited. Yeah.
Okay.
So I was a +1 for my friend Laura, but she was also not reporting. She was just invited as well. And hey, Star Wars folks, if you're listening, I'm totally open to go to the Mandalorian premiere as well. And yeah, but it was very cool. I had a bunch of our friends in the fandom there. The folks from Triad of the Force were there, and a lot of other familiar faces. And so it was cool to be there, and it was really cool to be there as like a Latina Star Wars fan because
Oh, absolutely.
yeah, like the defining moments of it for me, I like posted these selfies, but on our way out, the red carpet was fun. It was great. I got to meet Daniel Logan, who was super nice. And we're Twitter mutuals, so we hung out a little bit. But after the screening, while everyone was being filtered out, I was going one way, and then Diego Luna and Kathleen Kennedy were going another way. And so I spun around and started going that way. And I called out to Diego in Spanish, and he stopped, like froze right there and turned around. And we had like a really nice short conversation about how excited I was for him and for Andor, and like for the fact that he's another Latina man, just like Pedro Pascal, who's leading a Star Wars series, and how important it was for me and my family. And then I was super lucky to be able to catch Kathleen and talk to her and take a photo with her and just tell her how like the legacy of her work has affected me as a storyteller. Like she's been in this business for longer than I'm pretty sure most of us have been alive. And
Oh, yeah.
so yeah, I'm pretty sure all of us we were little glints in our parents' eyes when Kathleen Kennedy started working on movies. And
I don't even know if that was a concept.
Yeah, I don't.
I
Think
mean,
I was
she
even
had
an
credits
idea.
in like the Indiana Jones movies and everything. So like that was way before I was even thought of, let alone
Yeah, like
conceived.
so it's a legacy that she's leaving behind, and I feel very lucky to have just like had that moment with her, because those are not moments that like you really get at premieres like this. Like you could see them passing by, but being able to like have them stop and talk to me meant a whole lot. Oh, and I almost hit Mario Lopez in the face while I was taking a selfie, but he was very quick and he ducked right under my hand because I was taking a selfie with Laura, and I like raised my hand up, and then like AC Slater's face was like whoop, and it like went right under my phone. And thankfully I did not assault Mario Lopez that night. So
That would have been a story. It's like, hey, how was the Emperor? It was great. I hit Mario Lopez in the face. It's awesome. Might have a minor assault charge coming, but it's fine.
yeah,
It was a great night.
It's great.
And you saw the first, was it the first 3 or the first 4 episodes that
The
night?
first 3 episodes. So
Okay,
they showed
'cause I
us that
know-
complete arc.
I know they sent screeners for the first 4, but I don't remember what it was for the premiere off the top of my head. But that is amazing that you've had. And then you said this was Rebels season 4 that you had that press junket for, or was it one of the earlier ones?
the final season. So it was like
Oh.
the finale that we were going to. So
That is amazing.
it was great.
Like just being able to like say you like went to those events, let alone like had a part in like the press of it, is just something that I would have just cherished forever. And I'm sure you did as well, because your resume is vast, and like it's just certain things like that you can point out like, yeah, I remember that Rebels finale, and I remember that time I almost hit Mario Lopez at the Andor premiere. Like stuff like that, it's gonna stick with you for the rest of your life. But to wind the clock back a little bit, I'm going to ask you the first question I always ask everyone, whether it's on this show or on our regular show, is when we have someone new on, what is your earliest memory with Star Wars? Do you have a memory of like the first time you were introduced to it? Do you have something that specifically stood out? If you wanted to share that story off the top of your head, feel free.
I was at a Star Trek convention in Miami with my dad.
Oh.
He regularly took me to, when we had sci-fi and specifically Star Trek conventions down there, I would go with him because he would relieve my mom for the day of having a child around, and we would go be nerdy. And I think I was like 5 or 6 because I consciously remember this. And I was wandering the dealer's room alone because it was the 90s. And I encountered like a Star Wars like card booth, or like a Topps card booth. And there was like a bunch of really cool like cards from like Star Trek and Babylon 5 and all that other stuff that was going on at the time, and like Red Dwarf and all that. And the one that stood out to me was like it was that classic photo of Han and Chewie, where Han is like, he has the blaster drawn in front of Chewie, and Chewie's in the back with like his like, you know, height.
Yeah, in front of the Falcon, right?
Yeah. And so, and there was like a holographic background on the pack, and I like, you know, ran and found my dad at some other part of the dealer's room. I dragged him over, and I was like, "Oh, what part of Star Trek is this?" And he was like, "Oh, that isn't Star Trek, it's Star Wars." And he was just like really elated. Like I didn't latch on to Star Trek until much later in life, so the fact that I was like taking direct interest in this was really exciting to him, I guess. And we went home and watched A New Hope that night, and yeah, it's been history from there, because Dad wanted to share this with me because he went to Star Trek in '77 with his dad. So it was important for him to like pass that down to me, but he didn't want to like force it on me because he had already learned his lesson with Star Trek. And so he just like let me like come into my own there. And yeah, I've loved it ever since. And that was, the 90s was that time when the expanded universe was coming out. So there was new stuff going on.
Yeah, I was
going
to say, was this pre-special edition, pre-prequel trilogy? Like,
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Pre-special edition, pre-prequel trilogy. Like by the time the special editions released, I was like a full-fledged Star Wars fan. And I remember specifically that the Return of the Jedi special edition released on my birthday on March 7th in 97 or 98.
97,
yeah,
90.
Yeah, 97. Yeah. And my dad pulled me out of school that day. He is a school teacher, so this was like totally against his ethics. And we went and saw the Return of the Jedi special edition for my birthday that year. And I was really excited to like see it on the big screen, because we had seen the other two, of course, but like Jedi was my favorite. And so, yeah, so like, my childhood was spent walking down the street to my local library and sitting down and reading expanded universe books in the aisles. So yeah.
I mean, I'm a little bit younger than you, but I do have very similar memories of going to the library near my house and just looking at like the visual dictionaries for Phantom Menace at that point, I think it was, and then getting all the other. It was like they had the EU books, but I remember like specifically like the younger reader ones a lot.
Yeah.
Like, I don't remember the name of the series, but the one that Siri Tachi was in, and
probably
all
Jedi Apprentice or something.
Yeah. I remember like there was old Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon stories, and I remember like that's specifically why like I know in my heart that Obi-Wan was 25, like in Phantom Menace. Like that's a trivia question I'll always know, because I remember that being in one of the books I was reading. I was like, 25, huh? And it's just like 5-year-old Andrew really like enjoyed that for some reason, and it stuck with me since then. So go ahead.
So to jump off your previous question, Andrew, a question I just thought of: how did Star Wars really impact your view of storytelling, either as a kid growing up with the expanded universe books, or like later on when you had a sort of like concept of what storytelling was and what it became, like what it was? And so how did Star Wars affect that, if it did?
I mean, I think because I have that like cross-generational experience between the expanded universe and canon, I think the number one thing it taught me was that like you can only build out, like you can build out and make this a bigger thing than you'd ever think it was. When we were growing up, we had so many Skywalker books, but when I started kind of dabbling in books that had nothing to do with Skywalkers, and, I started reading like Revan, and I, went into the Old Republic, it showed me that like you can build a foundation for something, but make it so much greater if you love that universe a whole lot. So I think that like, in many ways, I don't agree with people who are like, this has to be canon, this needs to be official, because it's like the fun of Star Wars is being able to like toe that line and like take the original content, and then like make something new out of it. So that I think that's why I was like obsessed with Visions, because that's exactly what it does. It, yeah.
I just bought a statue the other day of one of the twins from that short. I love Visions so much.
Yes,
And that's why I was really like, when Conor and I did our Tales of the Jedi episodes, the one thing I pitched was I hope future seasons like let future like other creators outside of the Lucasfilm bubble tell stories, because if we get like 2 anthology stories in that format, I think it would just be tremendous. Because I mean, I love the Lucasfilm crew, but like there are so many other people that like have stories they want to tell in this universe, and I think outlets like Visions and like Tales of the Jedi would be perfect for that. So was Return of the Jedi your first one that you saw in the theater, or was that just a specific memory that you had? Like, did you see A New Hope and Empire also, like the special editions?
Yeah, I did see the special editions in theaters. Like, A New Hope was a big deal, but I think it released on like a weekend. And that like the other 2 had either released on weekends or we went and saw them on weekends. But Jedi was like, because it was my favorite, because it was my birthday, my dad was like, we're taking you out of school and we're going to see it right now on release day, because we have gone to these other 3.
That's perfect.
Yeah, it was awesome. I'm pretty sure we played hooky for the Phantom Menace too, because I remember we all dressed up, like we all had like our little Jedi and Sith outfits on, and like one of my friends had discovered, who was it? I think it was Luminara or one of the Jedi that was like way in the background in the Phantom Menace. Like she had seen a picture on the internet or something like that, like way beforehand, and she made like a full costume of this character. Gosh, I wish I could remember exactly who it was.
Was it Depa Billaba by any chance?
It was not Depa, because I would have remembered.
Was it Adi Gallia? Because that's the only other one I can
think
of.
It was Adi Gallia. Yes,
wow.
Exactly.
That's another character from that exact same Obi-Wan book that I've always had in my memory.
Yeah. She like, and she had like, what did she use? She used like the like foam tubes to like do the headpiece and stuff, and so she looked like super special, and then all of us were like schlubby little Jedi kids. We went and saw that movie, and like it was, I remember like every single one of those I saw at the Dolphin Mall in Miami, which is not only still standing, but now it is like a small country within itself. So it's really cool that like, if I chose to watch another Star Wars film there, I can, in fact, go back there and see it.
That's incredible that you still have that opportunity. And, like, where were you? Because you lived through prime prequel discourse then. And, like, I feel like judging by the Padme poster you have in the back, I think I know the answer here, but, like, what was your stance on that? Like, were you one of the people that loved them coming out, or did you have your, like, mixed history with the prequels and then eventually came around to them? Or are you just like, I hate these freaking like,
I mean, I was the age group for it. I was like 10 through 13 when the prequels were coming out. Not even like 10 through like 15. That was like a 5-year span, I think.
Every 3 years. So
yeah, I was definitely the target audience for it. I think I do remember being like bored during Attack of the Clones, but I think that's just because like it was made for a slightly older audience than where I was at the time. And so I don't think I really like was there to critique it, you know, like I was just happy to be there.
I got to see these movies. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just like, oh, Star Wars, new Star Wars. Yeah. Like I feel really lucky to have been like the prequel age that you were supposed to be coming up during those movies, because I don't know, I didn't really have anything negative to say about it. I was just happy that we got new Star Wars content. Like it felt like a miracle, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. I remember I tell this story a lot, but I remember because I didn't really have stable internet growing up until like probably 07, 08. And I remember like, because I loved the movies when they were coming out, and I remember I looked up, like, just for fun, I was like, I want to watch the Palpatine-Windu fight from Revenge of the Sith, and all the comments back then were like, this movie's terrible, how can anyone like this? And I just remember, like, the shock to my system, like, wait, people don't like the prequels? And then that was, like, the next, like, 10 years of my life was having to pretend that, like, I, too, did not like them, when, in fact, I was like, these movies are awesome! And now everyone loves them, so it's perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You had to like back then. You had to justify. It's like, all right, you like them. Why? Why do you like the prequels? It's like
the cycle repeats itself. So
yeah.
unfortunately, yeah, I think I was 8 years old when Revenge of the Sith came out. I have no memory of seeing it other than absolutely crying my eyes out at Order 66. Because I was very in the camp of like Star Wars was black and white, the Jedi are the good guys, the clones are the bad guys in this case, and it just like absolutely destroyed me. But like I look at it now with the added context of the High Republic, and I'm like, they kind of had it coming.
Then you watch the Clone Wars, and you're like, why am I rooting for these clones now? It's just everything turned on your head.
No, I'm just kidding. There are some dope ass clones. So
I have my mixed opinion. Like I think about oh gosh, those Trace and Rafa from that
Clones.
arc from Clone Wars.
I love those.
Ahsoka's walkback.
They're great.
I love the Martez sisters, and I will fight anyone who's like, they're stupid, whatever, forget you. They're the perfect lens to how the public felt about the Jedi, because they tell that story that Miss Angel Luminara showed up, let their parents die in front of them as children, and then she was like, the Force will take care of it, bye-bye, and she just left. She
really took Jaro Tapal's trust only in the Force to like the worst level possible.
She left these little children with their dead parents' bodies in their destroyed homes and was like, the Force will come take care of you. This is above my pay grade.
Damn Luminara.
You know what? I wouldn't call myself a Luminara hater, but I would be called a Luminara disappointed. Or I don't know. I'm disappointed in her.
It's like, you know what you did.
She's dead. The Martez sisters
Think
are.
about what you did.
Guess who wins in the end?
Exactly.
So.
I mean, yeah. Like she's. Oh my god. When she died in Rebels, people were like, "Oh my god, Luminara!" And then I remembered what happened with Barriss. Like that there's like one scene in the Clone Wars where Barriss and Ahsoka are like in extreme danger, and Anakin's like, "We've got to go help our Padawans. They're children." And Luminara's like,
"Oh yeah, I think it was I think it was the second battle of Geonosis arc.
Yeah, it was.
I will never forget. I know exactly what moment you're talking about, Catrina, because I'll never forget it too. I was like, like a rewatch of it. I'm like, Luminara, what are you on right now?
And everyone's like, oh, I can't believe Barriss bombed the Jedi Temple. It's like her freaking master left her to die probably more than once.
I just don't. Just the optics of it.
Luminara, the stove's on fire. The Force will take care of it.
That's not how this works. That's not, to quote Han Solo, that's not how the Force works.
What do you mean it's going to take care of it?
I didn't mean to make this Luminara hater hour, but like I think that she is that representative of like the council's like hubris and arrogance, like everyone always points to Mace Windu when they think about that, and I think that's completely wrong. I think that Mace definitely did have like his moments where it's just like that wasn't a very smart decision, but like I really a lot of the ways Mace thinks makes sense to me. So when you're looking for an example of like Jedi hubris, I point to her, and I point very often to like Yoda, because it's like, you should know better, buddy. Like,
Yoda definitely. Yeah.
You've been along how long? Like you should know this.
Like dude says it in some book. Like the problem with the Jedi Order is Yoda.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's that whole ass speech that he has, and I'm like, my dude's spitting fire right now.
Yeah, exactly. Like I so that's going back to that, like that's what stood out to me about like Luminara and her character and stuff like that.
So now we're giving you prime story information for Ventress Golden 2. Just have a segment in there where she's like, that damn Luminara, always so condescending.
She like
did face off in season 1, so
exactly.
Yeah, we just watched those episodes like
Dude, that was a
little month.
baller duel. That is
really
one of the
was.
most underrated duels, I think, in Clone Wars.
I think that's
very, very good.
It stands out to me too because not only is it a baller duel, but in the end, Luminara needs a child's help to fight Ventress. Like,
We've all been there.
Yeah, exactly. She's getting like Ventress is mopping the floor with her. And I mean, I think it speaks a lot to Ventress's ability that, like, you know, folks discredit her a lot when it's like, well, this is one of the only people who consistently needed both Anakin and Obi-Wan to fight them to chase them off. Like the best of the best needed to fight Ventress in order to chase her away from battle. And I'm not saying that like she's like the ultimate, because I think that Ventress and her experience with the Force is very different and very unique from many of the things we've seen. Like her and Ahsoka are kind of distinct parallels in their journeys and their understanding of the Force. But like when it comes to the Jedi of the Republic, it takes the dream team very often to ward Ventress off.
100%. So transitioning this into your just creative output, not only with Star Wars, but everything.
Yeah.
What was the moment where you were like, okay, no, I want to create. I want to be working these press junkets. I want to create my own podcasts. I want to do all this stuff. I want to go out to this world. And then I guess we can segue that into what led to you writing stories like Ventress, if you want to just go right into that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, like I said, I grew up with a super nerdy dad. And so it was actually my dad who introduced me to fan fiction because he was a Trek fan, and that's where a lot of fan fiction originated. And so the both of us were on fanfiction.net when I was like 11 or 12 years old, just like jamming out our individual stories, and like he would edit them for me. And we would.
That's
like,
wonderful. That is just the best parent-child relationship I think I've ever heard in my life. We wrote our own.
I feel very lucky. Yeah. He's the one who kind of turned me on to like writing fan fiction and like discovering that like I could be a storyteller in that respect. And you know, from there I got really into anime and comic books, and so I used to do and draw like a lot of fan art, a lot of like my own original comics, a lot of fan comics. And it just like spun out until, you know, I reached college. And I wanted to be a writer in some respect or way. And the only like career that was like super viable that I could definitely get a job out of immediately was journalism. So, I tried to pursue a serious journalism degree. I did all of my core classes at Valencia Community College, and then I applied to a bajillion scholarships and grants, and I ended up scoring my way into the NYU journalism program. And we did some really great assignments in the city and around the tri-state area. And I did like serious grown-up reporting. And then I found out that entertainment journalism was an option. And I could, instead of going and writing about how terrible the economy was and like how depressing it was to, you know, see our houseless neighbors on the street, which I will still write about and advocate for, I could write about movies, and I could write about the stories that inspired me and made me want to write my own original stories. And so it really came full circle from there, because from that moment, like, Star Wars and fandom have led every step of my career. You know, I fell into, I do like social media marketing and like influencer work and all that. And I fell into that because I realized that like I could work on movies and TV shows, and I could work on video games. And I got, you know, my name in the credits of like different video games because I worked on the marketing team. And so it's kind of, I feel really lucky that like all of this nerdy stuff has kind of guided my career every step of the way.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to go down the same path right now. So like I definitely appreciate hearing those stories, because it's just awesome to see that you were like, okay, I can do the serious thing. It's like, wait, hold on, I can do the thing I like more. Let me just switcheroo that real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Mhm.
I feel lucky to have that foundation. Like I being able to like pull up my degree and go like I was educated at New York University is always a great thing. But being able to take all of that hard work and channel it into stuff that like I really love and I'm super passionate about has been really great. Like it's led to publishing more comics and to writing these stories and creating like my first TV pilot. So yeah, so I feel
That's
lucky.
that's
So-
wonderful. Go
To
ahead.
sort of jump off on that, I have like a sort of two-pronged question.
Ooh.
The first is, was there any story in Star Wars or elsewhere that you could really point to in saying that, like, yeah, this was like the story that really inspired me to start creating or start, becoming a storyteller? And what thematically about Star Wars did you like take away from it? Like, what sort of lessons did you take away from Star Wars, and like what themes do you take away from it that you also apply not only in your own life but in the stories that you create?
Yeah, that is first off a fantastic question.
Thank you.
Second, the story is on the tip of my tongue. Yeah, the story's on the tip of my tongue. It's dark something, and maybe you can help me. It's a story and a comic series. It's where Luke goes bad, and like I
Dark
believe
Empire.
Dark Empire. Yes, because Anakin Solo is born during that story, and it's also a story where Luke goes wild and stuff like that, but it's also one of the first key moments that I saw Leia kind of just like she had agency in this story that I hadn't seen her like have since the films. She speaks to Palpatine, and it's Palpatine or Vader. She speaks to one of them and basically like tells them off, like they're Force Ghost or something, and it's like, you can't haunt me anymore. I'm in control of this now. Like all that torture and trauma you put me through doesn't matter because now I'm in charge. And that kind of like I don't want to say that ties directly to like a theme of what's going on in Ventress Golden, but like that resonated with me so much because she was in this very like different part of her life where like she had a family to think about, she had the growing New Republic to think about, like her husband was facing some traumatic moments, they were about to bring a new child into the world, and her brother was going hog wild. Like you really see Leia kind of become a commanding force in that story, in the way that she could back in the 90s. And I think that really set like me on this path where it was just like I could tell these stories with characters that were so much deeper than what we saw on screen, and I could process like parts of my characters that weren't exposed to me before. And I think that kind of deep dive led me to recognizing all of that like depth in other stories as well. Like I hate to like discredit my understanding of literature that way, but because Star Wars resonated with me so much, it was something that like stuck in my head, like and then I noticed it everywhere else. And I was like super duper young, and the Dark Empire comics were like part of my allowance basically. Like when we lived in Miami, I think this place is still around, don't quote me on it, I hope it's still around, but we used to go to a place that has recently been renamed Villains Comics down there in like Palmetto or something. And the shop owner, Glenn, was like a really good friend of my dad's. And so my dad would come and buy me comics every week if I did good in school and I was a good kid. And Glenn would throw me an extra pack of like top Star Wars cards if like my dad said I was good. So I think like from top to bottom, like Star Wars was like a huge part of my childhood, and being able to like learn more about these characters and discover things about them that actually had like some like obvious depth opened up my mind to like all the things I could do with them. Like it led me to like when I was a kid, I wrote a bunch of Dragon Ball Z fan fiction that was way deeper than the stuff you got in Dragon Ball Z. And it's really cool because now I watch like I still watch anime and stuff, and I watch Dragon Ball Super, and like the themes that I faced back then, where it was like I was writing about Vegeta's journey with fatherhood as a child and like how that changed him and like redeemed him. And now you like see that in Dragon Ball Super. And so, you know, I think I've always been on the path to write about Ventress because of that. Like, I don't want to say like Vegeta's the reason I do it, but like it's definitely, those are themes that I've explored before, and like becoming a better person and making pointed choices to like change your life. But before it was just Vegeta.
Yeah. So then, related to the stories, how did that transcend into podcasts and tabletop stuff and all that stuff that you currently do? Like, what was the catalyst for that?
It was really just a domino effect, you know. Like I think one of the podcasts that's like from my super early days that's still around was Itubanta Tambien, where we explored like pop culture from a Latina lens, and I did it with my good friend Kayla Marie, and we just kind of like sat down and we were like, what's our take on this as people who, you know, aren't the general audience that at the time was considered. So that kind of unlocked things. Like back then we were kind of just doing it for fun, you know. It was just like me and her, and we were just having friend conversations that we happened to record, and it kind of like spun out from there. You know, I did hanging with Teen Kane and with Jonah Marie, and our other friend, and I just kind of like kept making podcasts about stuff that I liked. And now I have like 3 of them. And then tabletop, like, you know, that was because I got a super nerdy job at Geek and Sundry, in like 2013, I want to say. Yeah, 2013. And Geek and Sundry was all about tabletop shows. So I had to learn how to play tabletop games, and I had to learn how to play D&D in order to effectively do my job. And I have not gone back. Like, I haven't turned back and away from tabletop ever since then. And then I found out that there were like Star Wars D&D games, and I found out about Edge of the Empire, and we had an Empire game running at work for a really long time that was super fun. And I just kind of kept going. And so I think like my training as a tabletop like performer was like robustly influenced by being able to sit on the set of tabletop and watch Will and the guests like work through board games, and like every once in a while they do a D&D one shot. This was a couple years before Critical Role officially launched, but having that exposure to like how the game worked, but also the character development behind every game was kind of formative. And I also just made like a billion incredible friends working at Geek and Sundry and meeting the folks at Nerdist and stuff like that. So yeah, I was in and I never turned back.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Like that's been the one missing piece for me that like I've never been able to fully do it, and I like really, really want to, but I've just never had like the right crowd or friend group or whatever. And then the one time I did finally get in a D&D group, it was like it died after like that 1 week, and I'm just like,
it's tough. So yeah,
I have a couple of the Star Wars ones that I really want to try out. It's just like working on it. And then
I just got to say real quick PSA. I looked up Villains Comics. It's at least on Google. It says it's permanently closed.
Oh, rip! Oh, my childhood comic store. I hope
was that
okay.
Was that a COVID thing, or was that just?
I think it might have. I don't know. I didn't check too long. I mean, the last time I checked on what that comic shop was up to was probably like 2018. So. Yeah. So, bummer. They were great. They had like all sorts of stuff. It was such a small space, but like that place was very formative for me. I remember I went back as like a teenager because all of my friends lived in the area, and so I'd go out to see them, and then we'd go to the comic shop. And when I walked back in, like Glenn like stared at me like, "What? Who? You look familiar." And then I was like, "Oh, I'm Doug's kid. I'm Catrina." And he's like, "Holy moly!" And they had like a back room. I'm totally like spinning off into like the ether here, but there was a back room where like card games would get played and kids would do like magic tournaments. And my friends and I were invited to like paint a mural in that back room. And so Like we had like a whole day where we just like created a mural with like our favorite superheroes. I like snuck in like my favorite ship like name where it was like Vegeta X Bulma forever like on the wall. Like it was great. Like it was really cool to like, you know, have phase 2 with Villains. So rest in peace, Villains Comics. You were a great place.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a lovely place. Support your local comic book shops, everyone.
Yes, especially now. Especially now.
Absolutely. So when you decided, or like when you were, I don't know if you were approached, or we can get into the story, but like, what is it about Asaaj Ventress that sticks out to you the most and has just made you interested in writing these stories about her? Was Ventress Golden your first Ventress story, or like has this been a character that's captivated you for a very long time?
Oh yeah,
the story.
Yeah, Ventress has been a focal character for me for like a really, really long time. I want to say like I fell into her in like 2012, 2013. I was just fascinated by her. She's this character that like has a path that, you know, some other characters kind of echo, but like there's no one who has quite had a path like Asaaj Ventress. No one except for, I would say, Anakin Skywalker. Like they both were sold into slavery as children, and in many ways, if like, you know, something happened, if what happened to Asaaj happened to Anakin, you would have seen him go that exact same path, and eventually he did fall to the dark side. So I think it's so interesting that like their paths in a way are like parallel up until a point where they kind of cross each other and start like, you know, being on the opposite sides in a way. Like he falls to the dark side where she chooses to move away from it, and she doesn't become a Jedi or anything, but she becomes something else within the Force, and something very unique because of her heritage and her experience. And in many ways, like, not to get like super personal, but like Ventress is a survivor of abuse, you know, like she's one of those characters who, like, I remember listening even recently to Dooku Jedi Lost. When you listen to her torture, it's excruciating. Like it's not even like a lot of screaming. It's you know, you hear her pain. Like I love that performance so much when she's getting hit with that lightning and you kind of hear her crumble under the pressure that Dooku has her under. Like it's something that will resonate with me forever. And so to think of that Ventress, and then think of the Ventress who like is at the end of Bounty, like after she's helped Boba Fett and Dengar and Boss like get that bounty, she's walking away. You see her in the center of the frame, walking toward the stars to like this new future that she gets to just define for herself. And I think that like you see her actions like very specifically. Sorry, that's my dog. You see her actions like very specifically chosen throughout like her vendemption, I like to call it, because she's always helping, first off, little girls in need. She's always helping people who are you know, like that episode Bounty where that little girl was being sold to be someone's wife. You see that click in her head, and it kind of clicks for Boba too, where he's like, this is an injustice. I don't like this. Like, I'm going to help you. And then Ventress like punches him in the face and like he gets thrown off into the side. But she actively saves that little girl from suffering like a fate so similar to hers, subjected by like the tyranny of like power and men in that society. And so I think that, like, you know, Ventress is one of those characters who just doesn't quite get enough credit for everything she's done, but also everything she's chosen to be. Like, nobody's had to die for Ventress to make her choice to become better. She just does.
Mm-hmm. And then if you want to tell the story, I mean, Conor probably knows details of this. But how did, and I guess you can take over from here, Conor, but like, tell me about how this story came to be, the creation process, who approached who, and then how certain characters were created. And then we can just get into the nitty gritty of that.
Yeah. I think I saw, Conor, you were posting about the Star Wars, like your fiction universe. And like, I had read a couple of the stories, like the very recent, like, the High Republic releases.
Let me check.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember what happened.
I remember jumping into your DMs.
I do remember that, and I said I remember telling you I'll talk to Austin and then talk to him, and then I think he reached out to you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, and then it kind of like became what it is now.
Yeah. It was something where I was like, I had already written like a fanfic about how Ventress gets the Banshee, which is her Lancer class pursuit craft that she has in Dark Disciple that she and Voss travel around in. And there is like a line in there, and there's also a line in like a summary from Star Wars Insider about the lightsaber, about like how she got it. Like one of the tellings is that she got it on the black market. The other telling is that like she built it herself. And so I kind of like combined the two, where she finds the parts from this little shop that she stumbles upon and then builds it herself. And so like that's kind of like what clicked in my head, was just like, okay, well, I want to tell a story about how she gets that lightsaber, but I want to make it mean something, so that when that lightsaber ignites and it's golden and it's like, that bright yellow color, it means something because of the decisions that she makes up until that point and the reason that she ignites that saber. And I think I pitched it like, it's kind of been there's been a couple variations of it, but there's always been Veth and Odo, like they've always been part of that story. But how she got to where, to from the beginning to the end, it kind of like changed in like slight detail. And yeah, like I felt very well supported, because I joined the Discord and had like a whole story group behind me, and I kept asking like, is this okay? Is that okay? Like, can I do this? Like, is this too weird? And they were like super, super supportive. Like, I didn't want to bend the canon that was established in SWEF. And so I also had the freedom of the fact that like you guys hadn't really delved into the Clone Wars too much. So
yeah, I think the only other story we had up to that point was Scars of War.
And that's after
So.
this is like still as it's going on.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
that's
but
right.
what I do
look at Andrew. Look at Andrew.
I did my research, man.
Yes.
I read the story.
Look,
So
I worked on Scars of War. I forgot. That's
but
the thing.
The one thing I
her.
did love about Ventress Golden is like, it's during the time of the Clone Wars, but it's not I wouldn't call it a Clone Wars story, because there's no clones, there's no battle droids. Dooku is like referenced. He's obviously has a big, like, he's part of the aura of the story. Like his presence is there, but he's not physically in it. So I like the fact that it's just Ventress going on this bounty hunter mission and then discovering these other characters, and the way you created that universe of like that ship town, or like the island town. I really liked it. Like, I just immediately got hooked into it, and then just getting to tell that story. It's shocking to me that it hasn't been told, and it's also, let me just say, shocking that I don't believe it's been seen in like on screen yet. Her yellow saber, because like they have replicas of it at Galaxy's Edge, but they don't. Like, it's never been in any of the animated shows or anything. So like getting to tell that story, I thought was awesome. And then the way, I'm not going to spoil anything for people that have not read the book or the short story, but like the way that scene happened, where she crafted the saber, I thought it was very powerful. And you do get the pulls of like the light and then to the dark, and then there's a great moment where, again, I'm not going to spoil, but she's like, I'm Ventress on my own thing, which I really like that, because the complexities of the Force and getting to tell stories where it's like, yeah, no, Ventress isn't fully at the light yet, because we're not at Dark Disciple just yet, I think. Yep. But it was just a really nice like way of telling things. So tell me about creating Veth and her grandfather. And you had a really nice thread about the character and like what went into crafting her. But for those who don't follow you on Twitter and did not see that thread, just give me details of like how the character came to mind, what you wanted to do portraying a character like her, and the kind of pseudo relationship and that her and Ventress developed throughout the story. If you just want to go into that real quick.
Yeah, Veth is like my favorite new OC. Like I adore her. I mean, I wanted someone, when I was creating the story, I wanted someone who was having a hard time. Like Veth keeps her head up a lot, but she's dealing with a bunch. Like her grandfather is sprightly, but he's an old man, and she is his only caretaker. She doesn't have necessarily a passion for the family business, but in his honor, she's keeping it alive while also pursuing her own passions, which is like developing medicine and salves and helping other people. And again, she's also dealing with the fact that like a local gang in town wants to take away her family business that has literally been there for centuries. And it's throughout all of that, Veth still chooses over and over and over again to be a good, helpful, caring person with empathy. And I wanted someone who could just like be that without directly telling Ventress like, oh, this is how you do this. Like she was just an example that Ventress could then choose to, you know, relate to or to care for. So when I was developing her, I wanted someone like that. And I also wanted someone, I think I said this in the thread, I wanted to create a fat, desirable character, because Star Wars, you know, but bless it, it has a really terrible history with people of different body types, you know, like fat characters are constantly like a joke, or they're like little cartoon characters, or like they're bad guys. Like I remember, oh gosh, okay, I don't directly remember, but there's like this debut of an Imperial lady, like the first like queer character that we got in the new canon is an Imperial. She's fat and she's awful.
Yeah,
like,
in Lords of the Sith, I remember
Yes.
that book because
Yes.
I remember reading it and I was like, oh yeah, no, it's like she's supposed to be like the first queer character and she was like not good.
Yeah.
And then you look at like characters like Orn Free Taa, who is like the definition of fat stereotypes. And then even in Andor, which I love to death, one of the key lines in the first couple episodes was how the Empire is so fat and satisfied. It's like you're using that as a derogatory term again. And it's just, I really like spoke to that because it's never like you said, it's she's desirable. She's depicted as, oh, she's so beautiful. Like Ventress is immediately struck by her beauty, even though she's like, yeah, who are you? No.
Exactly.
But like,
you're too nice.
Yeah, it's, you're
get
too
out of
nice
my way, pretty girl.
Cute. Like, what are you doing here? And like, there's no like joke where they're like, no other characters go up to her and are like, lose some weight, darling, or anything like that. Like, there's nothing like that. It's which I really appreciate, and it's great to see. Like, for those who are of different body types, they read that and they're like, okay, now I feel spoken to. I feel like that's me. I am that. That's how I view myself. That's how others hopefully view me. And now I get to read that on the pages of someone whose work I really enjoy. And that's always important. And that's why, I mean, it's weird saying it like in this way, but like that's why representation in any form always matters so much.
Yes.
And you talked about with Andor and with Mandalorian, like Latin representation must mean the world to you every single time there's more and more of it on Star Wars shows and films and stories and everything. So to get little things like that, but I just really loved not only Veth and her miracle salve, but I loved her grandfather. Yeah. I just thought he also kind of like, you introduce him and he's like, oh, he's just, crazy old man that lives in the fishing town. Mm-hmm. And then there's just a really great moment near the end of the story where he just flips that all on your head. And it was a really great moment. And the way you crafted these characters to where, like, again, I'm not reading a Star Wars book or anything, but like I was like, okay, this feels like something that would fit right in to the books and the comics we're getting right now, which I think is the goal with a lot of these SWEF stories, from the ones I've read and from all the things that I've heard on the outside working with the three guys I do. But it was a really nice, really great story, and to get a Ventress story like this, which again, she's such a popular character. Like today, it was literally Twitter was like, okay, today is Asaaj Ventress Day in celebration of her first appearance. Mm-hmm. And yet we haven't had anything in a while. And yes, the character is technically like in canon, but like you can go back and you can tell more of those stories. And again, I would not be shocked if Tales of the Jedi. That's another one they want to tell in the future.
That's what I want to get hired for.
Give us that golden blade.
Oh yeah. Look, I mean, the Golden Blade, I would love to see her years as a Padawan. Like it's so important to her. Like it's not just like, oh, she like was a Padawan for a couple years and it doesn't matter. Like her master's death is a turning point. It's what sends her boom directly to the dark side. And before that, like, you know, Ventress probably had like moments that were a little darker, but I think one of the things that's like not highlighted often, except for in that flashback, is that a teenage Ventress was a hero of Rat-Attack. Like she and her master were the protectors of those people. Those folks loved her and they saw her as a hero Jedi. And so that like snap boom transition in her life, especially as a teenage girl, is just so impactful and so like jarring, I think, for her. And so I would love to do like a Tales of the Jedi where like we start a story about like her mother before Ventress is even born in the coven with the Night Sisters, and then we learn a little bit more about Ventress as a Padawan, and then we like kind of flash forward and learn about, you know, the lightsaber and the new era of who she is. And I really was thinking a lot about like Padawan Ventress in this story, because I think this is like the first time, you know, Ventress stops and thinks about her inner child, and she thinks about how hurt that little kid was and what that little kid would think of her now making these decisions to be her own person with like no one as her master, you know?
No, definitely. And I love the callbacks to her Jedi Master as well, which we only really had in that one episode of Clone Wars. So to really delve further into that, I really liked. And then even like the
one episode of Clone Wars and Dooku Jedi Lost.
Yes.
Yeah, I haven't read that yet, Connor. So so my knowledge isn't fully there.
Really
I really need to. But then also just the complex thoughts that she has about Talzin, and then the Night Sisters. You really capture that in just, what was it, only like 60 pages? Like everything that you captured in that short story, I really liked, and it was a nice way to spend an evening reading this story, and I really enjoyed it. Like Connor and Jake approached me about reading it early, and Austin.
I think it was more Jake.
Yeah, Jake approached me about reading it early.
I think I was engrossed in the story already.
Austin sent it to me after it was released, and then I read it, and it was just, I really enjoyed it. And
thank you.
Getting to
what I really liked about it personally was that it was very character driven, to the point of it feeling like very methodically paced in terms of that. Like it felt like what's the episode from Avatar: The Last Airbender? Zuko Alone.
Yes.
Yeah. It just kind of felt like that sort of pacing to me, where it's like very, you stay with the character all this time. You get inside their head, and like it's not a fast-paced action adventure story. It's very just methodically paced, and you just stay with this character and really get to know who they are at this point in their lives.
Yeah, so. I'm so glad you brought that up, because I like to joke that like Ventress could have potentially been the Zuko of Clone Wars if she was allowed to like continue on the way she was, you know, she could have been that person who went on a redemption and like still had like the rough edges to her, but like she could have been like a huge catalyst to the Clone Wars and to the what could have been a success. I think
kind of look alike.
Yeah, they even kind of, they're like little, you know, Zuko has his little like semi-bald era, and both of them grow some hair out and get a little cool and edgy. So yeah, I mean, like I think that, you know, Ventress's path is like, it's something, the big focus of the story was that she had control over it, because not only did Dooku let her go, not only did she no longer have Talzin, you know, in her head, But the Emperor no longer had her as a chess piece. You know, she was no longer on his board. As far as he was concerned, she was dead. So he could no longer manipulate her, which could have really backfired if in another world where Ventress and Anakin became allies. Like that could have been incredibly dangerous for Palpatine and his manipulation of Anakin. Because I really think, like I said, the two of them are so alike that if Anakin and Ventress had a single conversation that wasn't about being at each other's necks, they could have really clicked and related and been like, oh, you were a slave too. Like, let's talk a little bit more about that.
No, that's a great point that you brought up, and I would love to see that in an alternate reality of Anakin and Ventress working together. And it almost happened in The Wrong Jedi, but then Anakin had to get a bit too force chokey.
Rude.
Come
so
on,
rude.
Man.
Honestly.
Again, that reveal, like we can talk about the merits of Barriss being a Muslim coded character doing this and turning there, but that reveal of Barriss having Ventress's sabers in her quarters, and then that fight is still one of my favorite moments in all of Clone Wars because they lead to it so well, and just that reveal, like, oh, I don't even have my lightsabers anymore. Someone stole them from me, and Anakin's like, hold on a second here, and then he starts putting two and two together. It would have been great if we went back and we actually got to see Dark Disciple as it was supposed to be told in the Clone Wars, and getting to see, like you said, the Zukoification of Asaaj Ventress.
Yes.
Only they didn't do what they did, but as someone once said, no one's ever really gone. So,
especially not a magical force witch buried on a magical force planet in a magical force lake.
Yep. I don't know if you're hinting at something here or what, but
no one's ever really gone.
No one's ever really gone.
Yes. Yeah.
Can't get really mad about that one because we didn't get to see it. We only got to read it. So it's like,
exactly. If it doesn't happen directly in your view, is that person really dead? Because we saw Darth Maul fall away, and then 10 years later, we find out he survived in the garbage on spite alone. So,
object permanence is a hell of a thing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I've had just a wonderful time talking to you about Ventress and about this story. To wrap things up, though, I want to do a little bit of rapid fire, which is how I end all of these ones. So in this hypothetical scenario, we're going to go off of what your comfort Star Wars is. So in this scenario, you are stuck on a desert island. You can only bring one of the following. You can only bring one movie. This is all Star Wars. So movie, TV show, book, comic, game if that's your thing, and then a personal item that has significance to you related to a galaxy far, far away. So if we go through that, not your favorites necessarily, but the one that you always go back to when you're having a rough day. So your comfort Star Wars thing. So if we start with movie, if you could only watch one for the rest of your life, what are you going with in this scenario?
Return of the Jedi, without a doubt. I love that movie. It's always been my favorite, and it is the Star Wars movie that I go watch when I'm sad, because it's that's the one that gives you, A New Hope is great. Rogue One is fantastic, an immaculate film. But in Return of the Jedi, everyone wins. There's romance, there's action, there's adorable little murder bears who can eat people. And you see the turning point of Anakin Skywalker, that's the resolution of every bit of suffering that he and the audience have been through from the beginning. And so it's wonderful. It gives me so much hope. And I love the Return of the Jedi.
Yeah. Great reasoning there. That ending, the victory celebration, is always just the most we did it ending.
It moves me to tears every time.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
My hot take right here is victory celebration is better than Yubna, but we can have that conversation off air.
Yeah.
No, I won't disagree with you. I really like Victory
I
Celebration.
think in terms of like ending the franchise, if that's what they were going for at that point, it fits the scene much better.
Victory Celebration is just a much better song to end on than Yub Nub.
Yeah,
like,
it also-
Yub Nub's a pretty baller song.
It's a baller, but like Victory Celebration moves me to tears.
In terms of like galactic victory against the Galactic Empire, Yub Nub doesn't really do it for me.
Yeah. Like, I'd still party to Yub Nub, but like as a movie finisher, I agree. Like,
yeah, I'm walking on eggshells there for the people that can't watch that in '83, but I don't care. So we move on to series. Out of all the ones that we've had so far, what would be the one that you could take with you on this island? Let's see if we go 3 for 3 with the other episodes we've had so far.
Oh man. Okay. I mean, it's so funny because it's a really tight tie between Rebels and Droids. like Droids is such a cute, silly, like fun little show that is definitely a comfort, but Rebels is like 5 seasons longer. There's a whole bunch of characters to get into. There's just like longer arcs. So I'll go ahead and like cave and say Rebels.
All right.
I definitely, I love Star Wars Rebels.
Three for everyone I've had on this so far has said Rebels.
Because it's the best Star Wars show.
Yes,
and
that is taste.
Like, what other Star Wars show has Harrison Dula? None
exactly. Andor has a chance. Andor
does have a chance.
They could do it if they were brave.
So now, the world of books and comics. What are you going for there? You can't pick your own story. That's the only caveat here.
If I read my own story 100 times, I would probably be way too critical of it. Like, the team can attest. I was sending in like last minute edits, like up to the minute.
I do the same.
Yes. It's gosh, let's see. Book. Hold on. I got a bunch of books behind me. You know what? I would go for From a Certain Point of View. It is for anyone who grew up as a Costco kid, it's the chicken soup for the soul of Star Wars. And I love the Empire Strikes Back FACPOV, but I really, really love the one for A New Hope. I think we had these like beautiful deep stories in it. And also that's one where B. Arthur's character is in that book. And
she's made canon in that one.
Yeah, she's made canon again. She's got a wife. She participates in like a big adventure. The Jizz Band is there, like the modal nodes have like a whole like story in that one, which I think is incredible. So yeah, I would probably go for the New Hope FACPOV.
All right. That sounds wonderful. And then are you super into the games, or is that one of your... Okay, so which one are you going to join this man right over here with the World of Fallen Order? Or are you going to pick something else?
As much as I love Fallen Order, I'm totally going to I feel like it's cheating to say the Old Republic, like Star Wars The Old Republic online.
It's not cheating?
Good.
If it's your comfort one, it's your comfort one.
That's a good choice.
I love it. I get to make all my little OCs, and we get to like go on all sorts of adventures. And like every once in a while, you get really lucky, and there's an update with like a new story. And usually it's about Revan, but whatever. Like it's still a new story. Not to like discredit Revan. I love her, Revan the woman. But I love the Old Republic. Like I think it's really cool, and it's one of those MMOs that like. It's kind of like Star Trek Online, where like you have the option to interact with other people and like you can get in with your friends and like do team missions, but like you can also just play through that game all by yourself and have a completely full and robust experience. So I will go for Star Wars: The Old Republic.
Yeah, you said nothing wrong there about Revan. I don't care what people say. That's
exactly. Fight me in the streets. What's going to happen?
Yeah, I want to. If I can find a way to run that game without my laptop just exploding every time, I'm 100% going to get into it. And then, lastly, an item of significance related to Star Wars that you would bring with you. Do you have anything off your head?
Yeah, It's a book, but it's not like a novel book. It is my incredible cross sections book for the Phantom Menace. It
I
has
have
been,
I know
yep,
exactly which one you're talking about. I have
it's
the same one.
it's been my prized possession since childhood. It's like one of the things that I've had since childhood that I've brought with me as an adult from like New York to LA, and it's stayed with me and I haven't lost it. It's got a little rip in it, but I love it so much. Like I love getting to like have that wide view of these ships, because in a way it's also like extremely immersive. Like I know exactly where like certain places are on certain starships because of that, and I know what certain rooms look like because of incredible cross sections. So it's really cool.
I think I have
I need to
one.
get like the updated book.
Yeah, I think I have one that they released in like 2016. I think it's Force Awakens, but it could be wrong. But I don't have that book personally, but I've definitely seen it. I think it was also in that library when I was a kid, and I definitely checked it out. But yeah, no, that was, I loved hearing your answers, and it was just incredible having you on. So thank you for talking to us about your Star Wars journey. Thank you for talking to us about Ventress Golden. If you want to just real quickly tell the people where they can find you, what you're working on, and where they can read your story, go right ahead.
Yeah, thanks for having me so much. I had so much fun talking about this story, and it's been really nice. Like I don't want to say it's feeding my ego, but you know, a lot of really great people have given me like big kudos on this. Like there have been people from Star Wars, from the team, that were like, we can't read this, but like congratulations on the release. And it's just been like really gratifying to know that like those eyes are on me, because now I feel very, very motivated to like write some more original stuff and hopefully get into the next Fact Pop. But yeah, you guys, yeah, let's hope. Let's everybody cross your fingers real tight so I can get into the next Fact Pop. So you can find me anywhere on the internet if you look for Catrina. That's OHCATRINA. I'm on Instagram, Mastodon, co-host, TikTok, all of that stuff, and Twitter for as long as it lasts. And I've got a couple great podcasts going on. One of them is Pedro Pascal, the podcast about Pedro Pascal, where my friend Rachel and I go through his long resume of awesome TV and movie appearances. I also host What's Glup, which is all about exploring minor characters in Star Wars and the fans' passion for them. The first episode with Dexter Jetster, or about Dexter Jetster with my friend Dylan, is up right now. And I host a Fight Club Far, Far Away, which is more like seasonal, and it's about breaking down the different fights in Star Wars and how they came to be. And I think... and I'm just like on a bunch of tabletop shows. So if you check out like my Twitter or my Instagram, you can keep up with the updates on those upcoming projects soon. So yeah.
And then, did you say where you can find Ventress, or did you forget about that?
You can find Ventress Golden on sweditor.ig.com/Ventress Golden. It is on the website. You can download it as an ebook, or you can read it right on the internet. But definitely go check it out and give the website lots and lots of like loving clicks, and tell them how much you love the story, so that they'll be like, hey, Catrina, write a bunch of new stories for us, please. And so I will.
Mm-hmm. And it helps everyone on this panel, so please definitely do that.
Yes.
As for the one-eyed knight next to me, where can the people find you? Thank you for joining me on this interview process. So where can they find you?
Oh yeah, this was sick. Twitter @DepaBanana. Instagram, I don't use it too often, but I have an Instagram, ConmanJFO. You can also find me at the Nerd Academy podcast, specifically the Star Wars segment of our show, Knights in the Nerd Republic, where I pretty much do the same thing that I do here with Andrew, where I talk Star Wars news, reviews, interviews, topic episodes, what have you. And also SWEditor.ig.com/fiction. We have a lot of stories there. I work with a wonderful group of talented people where we create our own original characters in the Star Wars universe with a connected universe of Star Wars fan stories. We adhere to the canon that Lucasfilm is still expanding while also making our own thing. In terms of what I'm working on there, I got a few stories in development. Can't really talk about them. Actually, there is one I can talk about. The Hidden Kyber. It is a story set shortly after the events of Jedi Fallen Order, unsurprisingly. And it stars Seer Junda and Cal Kestis, and it'll come out probably January. I don't know.
The date gets moved every single time he plugs it. But as for me, you can follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram at Starlight Andrew. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at For the Repub Pod and on Instagram and TikTok at For the Republic Pod. You can check out, I did another episode of Galactic Senate Sitdowns. It's being recorded on Monday. I uploaded that today. It's with my dear friend Allie of the Knights of Ren podcast. You can check that out. We had a really great conversation. And then I have another one coming later in November as well, because I didn't have any out for 2 months and I'm spoiling everyone. You can also follow me, or you can find me going to Austin's front door and pitching a Bix Colleen story for SWEF one of these days. And that's really all it is for us. We'll have our Andor recaps later in the week. It might be coming before this. I don't know when this is coming out. But look out. We have our coverage of the last 2 Andor episodes coming very soon. We're getting very excited about that. And our Clone Wars rewatch will be continuing probably after Andor wraps up, and then we can fully focus on that. But who knows at this point? But thank you so much again, Catrina, for joining us. Thank you for Conor for coming along and doing this interview thing with me. It was awesome. And thank you all for listening. So until next time, thank you for joining us on our journey through Star Wars, and may the Force be with you always.